How's it going? Let's get ready for some big ass motherfucking subjects. um, we're getting realer than real. And this is not necessarily, this is mostly to put things on the table even further. So, pragmatic understanding of what I call a gap in consciousness when it comes to a part, not the entirety, but a part of the black community. And you're going to start noticing some of these, you could say some of these habits and behaviors we've noticed throughout childhood and have lived with. But when you understand the impact that it has over time, this is where you'll start understanding what is a gap in consciousness. Now, consciousness, mindfulness, being aware of various things. That includes emotional subtleties, that includes empathy, and different levels and grades of empathy. All right. This is not just, oh, I'm going to say the word empathy and try to run off a general explanation, a general description of it. This is literally understanding, like feeling what the other person means, how the other person is, you know. So we're not necessarily gonna be doing any kind of lip service, or as little as possible, because hey, I'm still deprogramming some of my shit, but I'm attempting to help as many people as possible with the experience that I had and the dots I've connected with other friends' experiences from different cultures as well. Now, this is not only, and it might not necessarily be only in the black community, yet there are certain things that have been spotted which led me to perceive this gap. Okay, now starting first and foremost, you have to understand the aspect that again, from 0 to 9, everything that we intake, every words, definitions, habits, could be home habits, could be cultural habits, could even be school habits, all of that shit on repetition goes directly into the subconscious. So just like walking, you do not think about it anymore. That's big. Just like walking, just like your perception of time, just like, oh, December 25th. What does that make you think about, right? You don't bat an eye at it. It is something that is normal for you to perceive, right? Repetition, 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 and it's in the subconscious. You don't go left foot, left foot, you know? And the same kind of goes with your utensils, all right? Now, this has both a positive but also a negative. When it comes to the negative, and this is what we're going to explore to balance it out, some of the, let's say, home situation might have not necessarily been good for your mind. That includes when it comes to psychological and physical abuse. All right. Now, spoken about this before, and now I'm opening that box again. When it comes to beatings, biggest fucking no ever. All right. Biggest. Because literally that imprints on the child's body a survival aspect in a place where it is supposed to be safe. Meaning the body, doesn't matter what the trigger is. It could be even standing up for oneself. It could be preferring something. It could even be speaking the fucking truth. Okay? But not necessarily well taken by the parents, resulting in a beating. That body will then develop a survival mechanism to go refrain from that subject, because our living existence is threatened. Don't you dare try to add logic to it, because when it comes to the subconscious, it's not logical. It's like a Terminator. You can't reason with it. You can, but the initial trigger is not logical. Okay? So it'll simply see the event, pain, and then we'll go, okay, well, let us refrain from having that event repeat, depending on whatever the trigger is, as mentioned, certain examples. So this over time locks off this perimeter of function. Meaning, if it was speaking your truth, you're going to slowly start dwindling that habit. You will not be honest with the people around you that could cause you physical harm, as you've noticed, but by proxy, you will not be true to yourself. And this becomes one of the biggest detriments in your life, I might add. What, if you ain't going to be true with yourself, then you're going to be settling for shit. You're going to be settling for relationships. You're going to be settling with miserable type relationships, which is some of the stuff that we have been indoctrinated with in the household. If you're living with a person that will not accept your truth, that is not at the, some would say emotional maturity, but there's more to it, okay? But that's not at this point to live and let live enough to accept what you have said without going into a physical violence frenzy, then that's settling for a low-tier relationship. Quite low tier. But it's subconscious. So here's the fucked up part. You live in that environment. You see that other people in the culture are living in a similar environment. So then the brain kind of goes, okay, an early brain. Again, subconscious does not roll with logic, all right? It just kind of goes, oh, well, this is normal, right? Wow, shit, okay. It doesn't feel good, but this seems to be the normal path of it all. So, okay. All while inside, erosion happens. You got to speak your truth and then balance it. It's not an aspect of never speak it. And when I mean balance, well, we're going to get into that subject a tad bit later on. So, the physical abuse is one thing. It's whatever trigger it might be, okay? Whether it's speaking your truth, whether it is showing appreciation for something, whether it's just making a mistake. And that's another one of the worst things that could be negatively imprinted by physical abuse. If you make a mistake, whatever the mistake is, could be breaking a plate or whatever, or just saying something that you've learned from TV or media, all right? Or some other parent, all right? Having that will lead, again, the survival mind in the body to go, okay, well, then I gotta watch out for something that's considered a mistake from this other person's mind, which you will never be able to read. Always have to understand, you will never be able to read another person's mind with the amount of hours and emotional importance of said subject. It's lunacy. You can't guess. Even if you try to guess, you'll be wrong. That's kind of like saying, hey, your favorite breakfast? I know exactly how many times you've had it in your life, how it makes you feel, what are the other variations at the different places that you've had them. So you had that at McDee's, then you had that at that other fancy restaurant, then you had that in New York with a whole different taste, to lead you to this current point where you feel this way about this specific recipe. Of course I don't fucking know it. And you don't too. It's normal. It's... What, you think we're all psychics? Some of these parents did think so, but it's not necessarily that they thought so. It was just an automatic reaction. Still, the imprint on the survival mind kind of leads into a bit of a haywire aspect of not wanting to make mistakes. This slows you the fuck down completely. Because guess what? One mistake is just a concept. So, you want to see how much of a concept that is? When you started to learn how to walk, every time you fell down, was that a mistake? Or a learning experience? It's actually both. Which one are you going to focus on? If you can't and have not been trained to focus on both aspects at the same time. Because learning experience, yes, because the mistake leads you to adjusting, just like you tried, you adjusted, tried again. Got more data, adjusted, tried again. Got more data, adjusted, tried again. So, failure, mistake, or data. You choose. You can do both at the same time. Yet, with this kind of heavy-handed parenting, You're not led to consider both at the same time, because the survival mind kind of goes, oh crap, okay, this bad from other person's perspective and point of view, so me not do that again. Very simple, basic. It doesn't use logic. It just wants survival. Okay? That also fucks around with your life, as you can notice, because learning doesn't become a journey, a playful experience, and then going at high speed when it comes to learning and having fun with it. It becomes an aspect of, don't you dare make a mistake. That subconscious will keep you and refrain you from looking quote-unquote bad or quote-unquote wrong. Not to do a quote-unquote mistakes, but again, data, adaptation, you know? Those are very simple example, but remember, when physical abuse comes in, survival mind doesn't use logic and will not bat an eye at completely evading the trigger, the potential trigger, like, okay, there's a potential mistake, or, oh man, I'm potentially not reading this person's mind right. You know, it'll completely evade it and just miss out on that opportunity of growth and learning. Completely. So, do not underestimate your subconscious and how easy it is to program. Now, the other method, because, you know, now we were talking about the physiological abuse, then the psychological abuse. Physiological was the beatings. The psychological is the belittling, the gossiping, the drama aspect, you know, the complete denial of one's emotional output or one's truth. That often happened. I know I've made the joke, and multiple have made the joke, hashtag Caribbean parents, but that shit is real. There's a lot of gaslighting done. There's a lot of ignoring of another being's existence that's being done. You know, oftentimes you would say, okay, well, I'm currently feeling and living this because of some of the stuff that you are doing and that you are saying as a parent. And oftentimes it's completely dismissed. Oh, you're just making this up. Oh, go to Jesus. We'll talk about that religious thing afterward, because that's another big notch. You know, go to Jesus. Go do your praying. Oh, you shouldn't do that. Oh, couldn't you be a bit more like that other person who you will never live their fucking life? You know? Couldn't you be a bit more like that other person? Oh, that other neighbor's kid. Oh, he's a troublesome fucker. And it's like, huh. You know, you start seeing these patterns, the gossiping and drama, whether it's on you as the child or on some other child or on some other person. What that does, again, subconscious takes it as normal. So it's going to be normal to have beef, to have drama, to gossip about other people, right? Now, here's the thing, and this is just going to break that whole habit completely. Just like with the example of your breakfast, do I fucking know what you ate this morning? Okay, do I know how it made you feel? Do I know how the way it made you feel got you to act and respond throughout the day? Hey, let's say your breakfast gave you the shitters, the poopers. All right? I see you at work looking a tad bit nervous. I don't know why. I didn't know your breakfast kind of led you to the poops. I don't know. I don't know at all. Someone, a third person, would tell me whatever kind of story to explain your nervousness. Should I even bother with it, right? See, you got to take this into consideration. The whole gossip was just someone else's perception and perspective of an event that they never lived, or they were never present inside the other person to understand the context to the event that was lived by that person and any party involved. You gotta get that aspect of perception, but again, if you're psychologically or physiologically abused, you won't even care about your own perception of yourself. You won't go deeper than surface level. Oh, I'm this skin color. Okay, so I gotta follow the rest, right? I gotta follow all the stereotypical things from that, right? Watch out. It's a trap. You weren't born with that word. Right? Were you born with that word? Right out from the womb. You got to be honest with yourself. This is the kind of stuff that we're not necessarily fostering with these kind of physiological, physiological abuses and mental abuses. All right. And the gaslighting. We don't go deeper than that. Was I even born with that word? What am I so stuck up and associating with it, right? Where is it leading me? Do I even feel good about this? See, are you even allowed to feel good? See, now we're going to get into the religious programming, because that's another form of gaslighting too. One that's been institutionalized. And not all religions, of course, but you'll notice some of the practices, right? Go to your 55,000 Hail Marys. Programming, repetition, right? What do you learn about yourself? What kind of connections are you learning about yourself? Aside that someone else, which is supposed to be an interpreter of the all, which is in all of us and everything, that interpreter is supposed to tell you how the all that is within you is judging you from characteristic that interpreter is telling. See, can you see the disconnect, right? If the all's within you, then you don't need an interpreter. If the all created everything, that includes all the multiple variations and the multiple interpretation of the all, which includes all the other spiritualities, everything that's been created by the all. If you're going to say that it created everything, then you're blaspheming if you're denying the existence of other, or the equal validity of all others, right? That doesn't mean that you're going to have to, you're going to get into Satanism. Of course not. Meaning, and that's not to diss on satanic, it's not to diss on multiple things. There is a logical understanding of the all towards unity and expansion. Yet you'll never really get to that point if you're one and done and stuck on this only one way and completely denying the rest. You kind of want to move back to that video on the power of discernment and give yourself that chance. But if you've had emotional abuse and physical abuse, your subconscious is less likely to go, okay, well, I might as well not look at the other ones, because I've been told and I've been harassed to stay in one way of seeing. Again, not dissing the other ones. Of course not. All of them are valid, and I was just kind of making an example because often people will just jump to an extreme when you bring this up. And this is another thing, again, #Caribbean parents, jumping into extremes, automatically assuming a polar opposite, in a sense. Now, these are relative examples. There's deeper, depending on the person's situation and the person's living childhood up until this point. There are various other areas, but we could consider those three general areas that then, because you're not necessarily going deeper within yourself, you're settling for relationship, you're settling for friendship, you're settling for living conditions. You are not necessarily expanding your spiritual aspect with, multiplicity of possibilities, all created by that same energy, God, universe, whatever you want to call it, right? Well, you're kind of limited your spectrum of consciousness. It's kind of like we're all in an ocean, but it's kind of like staying in a pond instead of expanding further into the river, into an ocean, and further, right? It's fucked. But when you start understanding how limiting that is, and also how that gets you more into a reactionary mode instead of responding, then you start noticing how you kind of want to get in on this consciousness stuff, right? You kind of want to break out of those shells. And guess what? You never had shells to begin with until that childhood. You weren't born with that. You weren't born with words, concepts, and definitions. This is completely logical. You cannot expect a baby. That would be like expecting a baby to have words right out from the womb. Right? No. Take a moment to consider that logically. Then transpose that to you. You were that baby with absolutely no words, definitions, and meanings, right? All that other stuff was given to you by that environment, that living environment. Now, let's get to that point of compassion, because some of you might be fucking mad. And guess what? You are 155,000% right to be angry. You're completely right. Take that time to savor that. I'm listening to that song and I'm like, yeah, no, it's not to put you in darkness. There's a balancing process to it, but you first need to kind of acknowledge that every time you spoke your truth and got beaten down for it, you were still fucking right. All right? Doesn't matter gender, it doesn't matter sex, it doesn't matter race. This could even go for the white community as well. Again, when it comes to these kind of abuse, or creating those gaps of consciousness, this is a universal thing. I'm just targeting and pointing out that message for #Caribbean parents type of stuff, but it expands to more than that if you feel part or have had that, okay? You were fucking right. All right? If you pointed out hypocrisy, especially when it comes to that religious aspect of, I'm going to be praising that Jesus told me this, Jesus told me that, but then I'm going to start gossiping about someone else, or I'm just going to start hitting my child, and you called it out, you were right. Think about that. All those years, you were right. You were fucking right. Savor this. I want you to savor this, okay? Just, Even when it came to your teachers, if you found some inconsistencies and you just called it out and got a negative reaction for it, you were right. Because guess what? As children, we are closer to that source. God, universe, source, whatever you want to call it. We are closer to that. We are the purists. Our hard drive is empty. It's not corrupted with programs of women should act this way, men should act this way. That's being repeated on television, radio, and society by proxy. So, you were fucking right. Now, for the aspect of balance, and you can already tell where this is going. To balance things out, you also have to bring that aspect of compassion. Meaning, yes, a lot of pain was brought. A lot of gaslighting, so mental intimidation. Physical pain, mental intimidation, a lot of it, all right? Yes, it had led to certain blockers internally. Both physical blockers, because there's certain actions you won't necessarily dare to do, and sometimes you're going to feel that notch in the stomach. That's basically the subconscious. That's kind of going, don't get to that point. Watch out. You got to be careful. And also mental, where the subconscious is just going to skip out on certain things, okay? Lots of opportunities missed. But you got to understand, the only way that this habit can be propagated is by someone who already has that and who has only lived that. Lived settling, lived in lack, lived with reactionary people, with a reactionary lifestyle. It's like, oh, you said that's it! At much worse level. Because there comes a point where you just ask the questions. You start looking internally. You've heard the story. You've heard from Oprah. You've heard from Eckhart Tolle. You've heard from Tony Robbins. You've heard from Rosemary Knight. You've heard from multiple people. Okay? That there's a point where you look internally. There's a point where you're just pushed. But it's not everyone that gets to that point with this kind of, you could say, momentum. It's when it comes to that dialogue of, oh, you should have all done that. That's bullshit. If you don't know, you don't know. Yet, that's not what they taught, and that's not what they were taught. Can you see how nitty-gritty that programming is? You kind of want to pay attention to that. See how logical it is and how emotionally logical it is. Let's say, okay, so you have the beatings, you have the psychological abuse. As an adult, you have a kid. One, after the oxytocin, meaning, oh, brand new baby, 1 to 2 years. Yay, this is great. Oxytocin leaves. Kind of like the initial flames of a relationship. There's the oxytocin, focusing on everything that's positive and great. But after a while, the regular mindset kind of comes back in. Unfortunate. Well, fortunate, unfortunate. Everything's a non-duality, but this is another dialogue, okay? Not this one. So, oxytocin leaves. And then, every prior patterns, it's like going back on autopilot. So, I haven't taught myself to look within. Then, I won't necessarily teach it to my child. I won't necessarily know the depth of thinking within oneself. I won't know the depth of habits, where habits came from, how often have they been repeated, why are habits perceived as normal, to then not imprint certain habits on my kids or my kins, brothers and sisters. So it's normal, it's logical. And now, if you want to go back to the sum and origin of it, and this is why I call it a gap in consciousness, you can see that there are various communities. Okay, not in a racist term. You can see that the Caucasian/white community had stopped child beating years prior. Okay? This is tricky to formulate, okay? It's because I gotta balance it. Let me botch it up and then I'll see how I can balance it, okay? Well, they'd stopped child beating way earlier. Why did it continue in the African American community / black families / #Caribbean parents? Well, if you understand that the white community didn't necessarily have slavery for as long as, time-wise in history, okay? White community had stopped slavery of their own way before black community, okay? Now, this is not to open a race debate, and I don't want to give people that green card of racism slavery, okay? Stop it right now. Don't you fucking dare use this for that, okay? This video had to be paused at 28 minutes just to tell you, oh, no, you don't. No, you fucking don't, all right? Because the people that did slavery are no longer alive, so don't you dare fucking put that blame on the current generation, all right? Because it is, yes, there is subconscious habits of perceptions and acting, all right? That's why there's a gap. Slavery had ended for the white community much earlier on, okay? There are certain habits and behaviors that were fostered more internal looking, more looking internally, all right? New thought authors, okay? And even they were getting assaulted and attacked by the church, okay? Hippie movements, which opened the aspect of discussion, conversation, transcendental spirituality, and a big bubble when it comes to consciousness. Yet the black community came from, was kind of like in the around of slavery and then segregation. So naturally, looking at what was going there was a bit of hesitancy. Naturally, okay? It is understandable. But it's not an aspect of blame. It is simply laid on the table right now, laid on this table. I'm trying to put the table somewhere because I don't want to hit the mic. Laid on the table to be perceived. This is not an accusation, and if you're white or any other ethnicity, You don't need to feel bad. Fuck that university and college brainwashing. I already made a video about that. Fuck that crap. Because that also blocks consciousness expansion. Right now we're playing co-op, okay? So, when it comes to that parental habits and those parental abuses on the younger black generation, yes, there's a connection tied to slavery. On top of the utter mental blocker, which is the church. Because the church does not fully let you go within. Oftentimes, the institutionalized church. I understand that there's multiple branches that happen because they're like, yo, fuck this. And they left off with much more polite terms, maybe. We do feel like your connection with God is impure. And impure, maybe not. I don't know how they would phrase it. That's like telling your employer, fuck off, I'm going to make another building. Or I'm going to make another practice. Who knows? Entertainment. Still, when it came to church, the aspect that, hey, keep repeating the aspect of martyrdom. You always need to repeat this repentance. Feel bad for being alive. This is your fault. Baloney. Complete fucking baloney. But it keeps parents in a mental blocker, in a mental mindset. It doesn't dive into the logical and felt. And this is the combination. Again, Jesus mentioned it, but most people don't fucking get it. The mind, logical, and the heart connection, opening the gateway, the door to heaven. Go back to being a child without all the programming that would block your mind and subsequently block your heart. Combine both your masculine, Jesus, and feminine, Mary Magdalene, to make a whole. All of you. But that's not what they're teaching. They're teaching you to feel bad for being alive because you are full of sin. If it wasn't for the fact that I told you that or introduced that in your world because you didn't have that when you were born. That's like me saying, hey, when you were born, you have the left cut off. I clearly see I have both left. Oh, don't worry, that leg is bad. I just told you, I'm a high-ranking official. You're supposed to have that connection, but I'm the one telling you. And now you see how institutionalized it gets, right? So mind-wise, kid doesn't do the right thing. Well, Caleb said he had a better sound for it. Ragdolls. Still, I'm making jokes about it just to lighten up the mood, but this is kind of showing you the programming that happened onto our parents. And again, that kind of mental slavery has happened to multiple communities. So don't you dare try to use that racism card. Now we're at a point where it's like, yo, we're all playing co-op. Because naturally, when you start looking at, the spirituality, the hippie movements, the various new thought authors, not just in the West, all over the world. You're going world warrior here. Spiritual world warrior. But you're going world warrior. You look at the whole world. The whole thing has been created by the same entity, so why would you lock it off? That's like going into an RPG and going, you know what? I'm just going to stick to that one skill tree, that one ability set, and I'm just not going to beast mode with all of them that I can. Not logical, right? You really want to keep your party alive, get them all to have as many abilities as possible, or to look at many variations and then make your own unique mix. It's not one and done. You're all individual sparks of that same energy, whatever you want to name it. So all of it is valid. Your message is valid. Your existence is valuable. And fuck anyone who says that aspect of, oh, you should feel bad for being alive. Because that's only what they have in their own mind. So you can only see that limited perception and how miserable it makes their life. Oh my god, I'm going to look at other people. I see them all as faulty. Ugh. That's like seeing Pac-Man style, not Pac-Man, Space Invader style aliens which look like computer viruses all over the place as you look at people. That's a shitty vision. Shitty world. as a counterbalance to it, that's even programming. I mean, meaning some of those ministers, they basically repeat the same speeches. They don't get into the logical understanding of it. That's why it's not an aspect of debating. It's mostly having an aspect of having a conversation and updating it. Again, that's like staying to one book. It's like staying, and especially a book of 2,000 years, apparently, allegedly. That's like staying on Windows 93, while right now various habits have changed, perceptions of the world, intercommunications have changed, and we're at Windows 11. Again, press and replay that tape when it comes to Church 1.0. Oh, we don't accept women because Eve is evil and she did all of this. Church 2.0. Okay, we're going to accept women, but we're not accepting people of color because they are evil like Cain or whatever it was. Church 3.0. Okay, we're going to accept people of color, but we're not going to accept the gays because it's Adam and, blah, 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 blah. Church 4.0. We're not accepting the trans. See what I mean? It always expands because our level of consciousness expands, but the book doesn't get updated. You gotta be very careful with ideologies written by people and sticking to this one and done perspective, because then you can't see the imbalances and the illogical aspects of it. And then again, mental blockers. All right. So unfortunately, this is what we had to run with for those who kind of wanted to get a gaze at not generally saying that the entirety of the black community had that, yet a majority dealt with that. And we're getting the fuck out of it. Frankly, I mean, I could make some reiterations on some strategies and solutions. Do not lock your mindset to one and done. Already said that, but let me repeat, because repetition is how we learned at that later age. So if you want to beat that subconscious and you know you can do it, you got this. It's already done as soon as you said that in your mind. All right. Then it's repetition. Allow yourself to go into different social groups and circles of people. Open yourself up to different kind of discussions, to different kind of journeys, events, activities, right? Again, if it wasn't for the word, you are part of this community, this word that you didn't have when you were born, then you wouldn't be so anchored and attached to it. It wouldn't necessarily be a behavioral habit. If we didn't have parents that would be stuck to that behavioral habit, then it wouldn't be passed on to us. So open yourself up to that. Again, we're all playing that same game. We're all born the same way. So what's the logical point of sticking to that one label? Think about it. Again, you stick to that one label? You want to stick to that one skill tree? Or do you want to maximize it by blending multiple things that are fitting your own unique feeling and style? Again, we're all individually granular, different, nuanced, and we all bring something to the table, right? But you got to let yourself unlock that shit. Now, when it comes to, let's say, your parents and the damage has been done, get further into discussions. Be open to the other person's feelings. Do not gaslight them, which means do not completely deny their feelings and what they say. Do not assume that they are lying. Do not assume don't fucking assume. All right? Because that immediately locks off discussion, which then locks off inner discussions and inner understanding, which then locks off opportunities of development, which locks off opportunities in life. Here's where the real deal comes in. And this is why I'm really hammering that aspect of don't you dare fucking pull that racism card. Because indirectly, the community does it to itself without knowing. All those habits, the belittling, the verbal abuse, the physical abuse, all of it is what's fostering criminal activities. The aggression has to get out somewhere. Ain't gonna fight my parents, right? That wouldn't feel great. They had the wooden stick or the belt. Might as well fight someone else. Let that aggression out. And of course, there's different methods of getting aggression out. If I was allowed to look at different communities, looking at different spiritual practices as well. But now you see what ends up when you're one and done, locked in. Didn't know what you didn't know. That's fine. Literally. You didn't know what you didn't know. We didn't know what we didn't know. And that goes for the collective as well. There's various habits of treating each other, of perceiving each other that, well, not helpful. Not helpful at all. But we didn't know what we didn't know. We were just running what we were given. All right? It takes a certain kind of humility or just humbleness. And this is also another thing that, we don't necessarily get from #Caribbean parents. Because oftentimes you would try to bring certain things up and, as mentioned, physical beatings or just complete denial. So, we're breaking those chains. Cyclical chains. We're not going back to slavery. Well, some would say metaphor for slave mentality. And it is. So we're breaking that shit. We're literally breaking those chains. All right? Those cyclical chains. And that goes for, by proxy, any ethnicity or cultural group. Like, when it comes to bearing a child, some would say it is a huge responsibility. Well, yes, yet we collectively weren't necessarily told the nuances and the granularities of that responsibility and how it affected us. This being the biggest key. If you really want to deep dive into this and you really care about that other life that you're about to affect, deep dive into yourself. How did you come up with all those ideas, perceptions, habits, reactions? Ask yourself and be open. Write it down in a journal. Feel free to say it out loud. Record yourself. Who gives a fuck about another person's perspective? They haven't lived your life. You're the only one who's living your life in your eyes each and every second's understanding what led to what perception, felt, moment, feeling, grade, nuances, and all of that. So, whatever. This is why I say gossip was trash. Just mental McDonald. That's why the drama was, again, not worth it. Whatever beef was going on was often surface level BS. And this just keeps the cycle cyclically going, or keeps the cyclical aspects of physical and mental violence, Oh my God, she said something about you. Oh, well, I'm mad. Even though I did not hear that person say it, nor do I know the context and the perception that led that person to say this. Nor should I give a fuck, because it's this person's perception, and that's just telling me that this person's perception is low tier. Okay, well, that's a bit insulting. Let me balance that back. Needlessly aggressive, taught to be aggressive, taught to be assuming. Is it well-founded? Maybe it is something that I have done. Maybe it is something that I have willingly done without necessarily perceiving how this other person will react. Maybe it is something where I had negative intentions, or maybe not. See, it's all in the aspect of not necessarily assuming each other's intentions. And again, we're cleaning up that habit. And that goes for any other ethnicities. We can't assume any other ethnicity's intention. You gotta be careful with that. We would dive into quantum physics, metaphysics, or even what Jesus would be mentioning, but we first gotta start with the initial baby steps. Now, I mentioned that in some prior videos, so you can check it out. It's some cool stuff, but once you get it, you start understanding what your assumptions lead you to, and you can also look back and see what assumptions led your parents to. Our parents. When that's understood, compassion is just natural. Yes, there's going to be some frustration. Natural, because, hey, what patterns were you given, right? Frustration, depending. If it's not from the parents, then we got it from movies and TV shows. What does a good main character do once they found out they got fucked over? I'm here to strike back for revenge. Right? Season 2. I'm going on revenge one more time. A betrayal happens in Season 3. Mendoza! See? Repetition. It just gets into the subconscious. And the same could be if you were... Some people would call them hood people. I don't like that terminology. People that are in violent natures. You know, that kind of circle of friends. Same kind of goes with gossip. Repetition all around you. So naturally you would have those habits. See, it's simple, it's easy. So don't blame yourself for it. Just start doing different kind of repetitions. Ask yourself, yo, you ain't settling for this life. You ain't settling for these relationships. What do you want? And yeah, you're gonna disconnect some ties. It's natural. It's okay. Do it with compassion. Don't cuss them off, calling them, yo, you guys are basic bread. I don't want to stick around you. That's a bit harsh, because guess what? Would you like someone else to do that to you? Again, do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. That includes having compassion for those that you would consider basic bread, which, kind of like the crab bucket analogy, would kind of hold you down in a certain kind of repetition and assumption of yourself. Kind of want to push the crab. Push the bucket. Make the bucket tip over. Push the crab. Just, hey, I'm getting to another point in my life. I'm getting to another level in my life. Thank you for having taught me what you could at the level of consciousness that you had. And also, and you can be a bit cheeky about it, everything not to do. Everything not to do to someone's mental or physical state. Thank you for teaching me that, because I can teach better to the next generation and have a much better cycle going. And maybe you're going to be at the state of consciousness to understand this. Maybe not. It's okay. You have brought your gift to the world, which is my now understanding of what not to do. By proxy, knowing what to do at a bit more of an accurate state. Again, there's no perfection. That's another thing to wipe out from mental habits that we've been brought into. Oh, I don't want to make a mistake, because there's got to be perfection. But I can't read the other person's mind, so I don't know what this perfection is. It's going to make me nervous. Fuck that. Make it fun. Have that playfulness. You find something that you didn't necessarily like in your habits and attitudes and perception. Where'd I pick this from? Oh! How many times has it been repeated? Oh! Alright, now what do I want? Let's get into gear. And then reflected back as a mirror. Would I like that new habit reflected back onto me? Oh, happiness? Playfulness? Fun conversation? Non-judgmentalism? Oh, wow! Fuck yeah, I'd like to have that. Patience? Ooh, that feels great. Kind physical interaction? Intimacy? Ooh. Non-assumptions? Deeper discussions? Ooh, that feels like heaven. That's like logically combining the brain and feelings in the heart and opening heaven. Huh! Again, you want to play with this and then pass that on to everyone. You weren't born with words such as race, ethnicities. You were spreading that from the beginning until they locked you into those boxes. See how that programming worked, right? And they're doing a numbers in college right now with those whole social program. Ooh, they want to keep you in those lockbox. Flip that shit. Fuck it. We're all playing co-op. I wouldn't have learned and understood this stuff if I haven't looked at multiple worldly practices, multiple worldly text, multiple worldly videos, videos from India, videos from Europe, videos from Mexico, videos from the United States, and I'm Canadian. Videos in French, in France, in Quebec. Videos from Japan. See, videos from Italy. My boy, Dr. Joe Dispenza. Rosemary Knight from the US. All of the world's warriors. Literally, you make it fun that way. You play with this, and you just pick and choose. There's no one and done. Some of it might match you, some of it might not necessarily match you. Find your flow, find your style, do the inner work, clear that shit. Do it for the next generation. And watch how fast it works. Watch how fast life becomes fucking amazing. Literally. Both by your perceptions of yourself and everyone else, and your actions from that perception. Perception is key. Repetition, repetition, repetition leads to that perception. So watch out who you hang around with, what you listen to, what you constantly watch, what you constantly pray, because that's a repetition. And then just have fun reflecting back. Again, if you wouldn't want someone else to reflect the same attitude back to you, then ask yourself, what would you prefer? And don't you settle. Alright? Also, don't you dare use the racism card. Seriously, the blame game is a waste of time. And that's like, I'm going to blame this current generation for what has happened when I wasn't even alive. That doesn't work. Flip it. Okay. As a Haitian, my ancestors have killed a lot of white people during the big freeing of the country. Should I be blamed for having killed someone else's ancestor? And possibly fucked up their family line in a way. And some would say karma. Careful, very careful about that. Be very careful about that. Again, do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. Pointless gaslighting. You weren't living. You weren't living it. Would you like it? You should feel bad for that. Or, hey, let's go a bit more recent. There was a gang fight happening. Should I feel bad for someone of that community attacking someone of another community? Should I feel completely bad? You see, like, you gotta get logical. Then skip out on the feeling bad because it's completely illogical and get to the solution. What leads to this kind of violence? We already spoke about that a tad bit earlier on. To a surface degree. Every individual situation is different, of course. Yet at the same time, if we all had that inner work and asked those inner questions or treated each other better, there would have been that different ripple effect. So there's a loose generality, but there's nuances to it. And this is where you get to which point you get when you allow yourself to have that inner talk and open discussions to get multiple points of views, because you're able to process those nuances. You don't automatically judge based on surface level, basic bred, main character mentality from television, stereotyping other people. Red versus blue, this versus that. Surface level. You got to get into the true happiness is understanding those nuances. Yes, at the beginning, it takes a while. Knowing everything that's going within you. Yeah, well, we're basically given these devices to take our attentions away, and the same kind of goes in an unbalanced way. Of course, we didn't necessarily know how to balance it. Same goes with TVs and video games. We didn't know how to balance it. But the first and important thing to balance out first is yourself. Everything else is gonna have its own time. And when you're able to process that within yourself at your own speed, again, we think at the speed of light, and just like motherfucking Saiyans, we get faster and faster and faster as we practice and take that time. That's why you got to do those inner conversations or meditations. All right? You'll be able to process multiple nuances of understanding in the moment live. It ain't rocket science. It's just practice. But you got to put the time in. So how much do you care about yourself and the next generation is the question. That is the question. Trying to do the Caleb City thing. That is the real question. Who is going to win? But yeah, that's the question. How much do you care about yourself and the next generation? How much do you care about the people around you to work on yourself to emit good shit? Natural good shit. Meaning, as babies, you were already in that state. Again, Kingdom of God is open to those who return as a child. I will not bring the verse number because I make fun of that. The behavioral habit of trying to go into an argument and going, stop, your point is valid, but I will pull out Matthew 55:87 as a repetition. No, you literally understand that logically as a kid, you didn't necessarily have boxes and labels and ideologies. We were, all of us, born blank. Upon getting into that state, everything kind of free flows. You don't assume shit. You don't pre-perceive stereotypes of anyone. That includes race, gender as well. Everything. Life just becomes fun, and you match with the people that you match. You don't settle. You have fun. Oh, cool. I'd like to be at that state. I want to match with that kind of people. I want to be in this kind of environment. Okay, cool. Let's go. Oh, I can't do it because I'm this. Fuck that label. That's just mental programming, societal programming. Check out John McAfee's last interview with a student. Last interview for a reason, right? He straight up called it out. Neurolinguistic programming. Just like elections in a way. Dude was smart. There's a reason why they Epsteined him. Too many people talking about this stuff, and too many people want unity now, so they can't do shit. Have a good one, people. Have that fun. Oh, big thanks for everyone with comments, personal DMs, conversations on Telegram, and even the Facebook, Spiritual World Warrior. It's entertaining. It's great to have like multiple nuances mashing in. It's like to have more openness of discussions, you know, and, you know, helping people that want to get to that next level, because next level, there's infinite levels of numbers. It's helping people getting to that aspect of wellness, personalized wellness, you know, being in tune with what they find personally well. And that's fucking cool, because as they're well, they dish out that wellness to everyone else. The cup overflows. So beacons, beacons, beacons. So that's fucking cool. That's fucking hype. And hey, that's why, again, I say, have that compassion for that experience. Lots of learning. And more people are learning from it. And the next generation is learning from it. So there's always some positive within that negative when you do the inner work and have fun with this. So again, thank you everyone for those conversations. Same big ass shout out for the donations through PayPal and that link in the description, and even on Linktree. Again, thank you guys. It's awesome. And yeah, well, we'll see what happens even further. Let's keep on deep diving and sharing, and then helping other people just getting into that state with as much, you could say, patience, playfulness, terminologies, variations in terminologies that we can. Alright? You got this. We're changing this shit. We're going to see hashtag Caribbean parents symbolize something that's much better afterward. And then we're going to look back and go, I was going to make the Dave Chappelle live. Ha 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 ha. Spaghetti, spaghetti. You gotta play with this. But we're gonna be laughing back and kind of going, okay, well, that was a great boost. The elastic band. Got this, people. Alright, later.